In this episode, we return to possibly the worst case we have ever covered. This episode will discuss child abuse, rape, sexual abuse, and torture, so viewer discretion is advised. This is the murder of Sylvia Likens. Welcome to Enter the Dark. Hello and welcome to Enter the Dark. I am Jan. With me as always is Les. You alright, Les?
Yeah.
Good. It's on your little vape. Yeah. Like a dummy. Welcome. Yeah, we're redoing Sylvia Likens for a couple of reasons. One, the audio originally is crap, and the main thing everyone says is, oh, the audio is really low. I know it is. It messed up in compression. When I did it when we first started, and the editing is all horrible. The script was horrible and the audio was horrible. So I want to do it again to give it a better justice it deserves as a case. Now I can actually edit a bit. But yeah, you know about this one though, don't you, Les? But you probably forgot all about it.
I'm not gonna lie, yeah.
It's the worst case we've ever covered.
It's not.
Possibly is.
The toy box killer was the worst.
Okay, well, just hold your judgment, Judgy Mick Judgeson. Okay, until I've got the AI bot that I forgot about to say the names of our Patreons.
Amanda Weaver, Kelly Weaver, Liv Templeton, Elizabeth Lee, Krista Francis, Verena Schmid, Angelina Cheshire, Cookie Fenner, Mandy Madden, Gelada Pang, Becky Louise, Jules Henderson, Casey the Cannibal, Amanda Champagne. And our free members are Nicola Walker, Sloshing B Lisa O'Neill, Heather Hill, Misty Dawn, Alexander Gutierrez, Melanie, Ayumi Hajime. All hail our machine overlords, and back to you human scum.
Thank you, AI. Yes.
That's so fucking cynical.
I forgot. I tried to load it up.
Is it a good AI bot? Like,
no, of course it's not. It's just a voice. No AI bots are good unless you take over. And
some are like really fucking good these days.
I can't afford them ones. I tried to get one with the voice of Mr. Beast, but it didn't work. But yes, if you do like what we do and you do wish to support us, the best thing you can do is hit that subscribe button or like and leave a comment for us. That's absolutely free. Also free, you can join Patreon for free at www.patreon.com/enterthedark. Anything from $1 up to $50. You can do, you get free stuff with that, but the free subscription, you can just join and hang out with us and stuff. But just watching the videos, that is all the best. But enough of this shenanigans. Let's jump straight into it. So, Sylvia Marie Likens was the third of 5 children born to carnival workers Lester Likens and his wife Elizabeth. She had 2 older siblings, twins Diana and Daniel, and 2 younger siblings who were also twins called Jenny and Benny. Lester.
Yeah, I remember this now. Yeah. Jenny and Benny.
That's the only laugh you're going to get out of this. So Lester and Elizabeth's marriage was not easy. They travelled across Indiana during the summer selling refreshments at carnivals. This meant moving often and also meant the financial situation was often perilous. While travelling, they would take their sons with them. However, they figured that carny life was not for the younger Liken girls and would usually leave Sylvia and Jenny with relatives so they would not miss school. Now, Sylvia was described as a friendly and likeable girl who was very protective of her younger sister, who had polio, which affected one of her legs, resulting in a noticeable limp and requiring her to wear a steel brace. Now, Sylvia would make sure that Jenny was included in the usual teenage activities, going so far as to help her learn how to roller skate with her one strong leg. But in July 1965, something of a series of events took place that would start Sylvia and Jenny's journey into what a senior investigator from the Indianapolis Police Department described as the most sadistic case he had ever investigated in his 35 years he served on the force.
That's what Christopher Reeve had, isn't it? Polio. Oh no,
he fell off a horse.
It's a polo accident. See, that's where I'm getting confused.
On July the 3rd, 1965, Elizabeth Likens was caught shoplifting and sent to jail, which meant Lester had to figure out what to do with the girls while he travelled with the carnival. Now, for some reason, he did not send them to stay with their family this time, but agreed to let neighbour Gertrude Baniszewski take care of the girls. She assured Lester she would take care of the girls like they were her own children, and boy, did she have children.
Oh, shit, yeah.
So she had Paula, who was 17, Stephanie, who was 15, John, who was 12, Marie, who was 11, Shirley, who was 10, James, who was 8, and a few-month-old Dennis Lee Wright Jr. They were all living with her at 3850 East New York Street, and Lester thought it would be perfectly fine, especially as Sylvia and Jenny went to the same school as Paula and Stephanie. Now, Gertrude Baniszewski was the third of 6 children and was a high school dropout, leaving at 16 to marry John Baniszewski, who had a violent temper and would beat Gertrude on occasion. They remained together for 10 years, having 4 children before getting divorced. She then married a man named Edward Guthrie, but they got divorced after 3 months, and she went back to John Baniszewski and they got married again, had another 2 kids, and got divorced again in 1963. Weeks after the divorce, she started a relationship with 22-year-old Dennis Lee Wright, who physically abused her, despite her being pregnant and giving birth to his son, Dennis Jr. Shortly after the birth, Dennis Sr. ran away, leaving Gertrude alone with her 7 children. Now, the best description I've found of Gertrude was a 5'6", 36-year-old, haggard, underweight, asthmatic chain smoker suffering from depression due to the stress of 3 failed marriages, a failed relationship, and a recent miscarriage. Relying on money being sent from John sporadically to help feed the children, she did small jobs around the neighbourhood like cleaning and sewing to earn some money to pay her monthly rent of $55. So when Lester came up to her offering to pay her $20 a week to look after his 2 daughters, her dead eyes must have lit up. And for the first few weeks, everything was fine for the Likens sisters. Sylvia would help out around the house doing chores and would go to Sunday school with the other children. However, after a few weeks, the payments from Lester would start arriving late, and even though it was only by a couple of days, Gertrude would punish Sylvia and Jenny by beating them with a 1/4-inch thick wood panel, telling them, "Well, I took care of you 2 little bitches for a week for nothing." Gertrude would focus her abuse on Sylvia, with many believing it stemmed from her jealousy over Sylvia's looks. The abuse would take place after school and over the weekends, and would initially start with beatings and withholding food, causing Sylvia to eat scraps and rotten food from the garbage. Other members of the family would begin to join in on the abuse after overhearing Sylvia saying that she had once had a boyfriend. Paula would grab Sylvia and kick her in the genitals and accuse her of being pregnant, which was ironic because Paula was 3 months pregnant at the time. More people would join in on the abuse, and a local boy named Randy Gordon Lepper force-fed Sylvia a hot dog overloaded with condiments including mustard and spices, causing Sylvia to vomit. She was made to eat the regurgitated food afterwards as a punishment. Stephanie's boyfriend, 15-year-old Coy Hubbard, would physically attack Sylvia after accusing her of calling Stephanie and Paula prostitutes at school. Paula would join in on the attack, breaking her own wrist after hitting Sylvia so hard. When she returned with a cast on her wrist, she continued the attack on Sylvia. The Baniszewski family seemed obsessed with prostitution, with Gertrude constantly telling Sylvia about how prostitutes and promiscuous women were dirty. Now, Coy Hubbard would start bringing his friends around to beat Sylvia while Gertrude tagged them on, using her as a punch bag and throwing her around like a rag doll. They would also lacerate her body, burn her with over 100 cigarettes, and at Gertrude's insistence, make her strip naked and insert a bottle into her vagina to show Jenny what type of girl his sister really was.
Oh my God.
Gertrude would stop Sylvia from attending school after she admitted to stealing gym clothes that Gertrude had refused to buy her, and beat her with a leather police belt before once again kicking her in the genitals and screaming about the evils of sex before marriage, before ending the attack by burning Sylvia's fingertips. Now, you may be thinking, why didn't the girls tell anyone? Well, Gertrude told Jenny that if anyone found out what was happening, she would get the same treatment as Sylvia. Even when their parents came to visit occasionally, both girls would not speak about the abuse, possibly because Gertrude would stay in the room with them during the visits. After their final visit, Gertrude smiled and said, "What are you going to do now, Sylvia? Now they're gone." The girls did tell their older sister Diana about the abuse they were receiving, but she thought they were just over-exaggerating and was not aware of the address where they were staying. She would meet up with the girls again and when they were in the park with Marie Baniszewski and gave Sylvia a sandwich, and after she said she was hungry. In response, Gertrude accused Likens of engaging in gluttony before her and Paul had choked and bludgeoned her. The pair then subjected her to a scalding bath to cleanse her of sin, with Gertrude grabbing Sylvia's hair and repeatedly banging her head against the bath to revive her when she fainted. Now, some neighbours had become a bit suspicious, and the father of a neighbourhood boy called the high school to say that a girl with open sores across her entire body was living at the Baniszewski household. As Sylvia had not been attending school, they sent the school nurse to the house to see what was going on, and to see if Sylvia needed medical help. However, Gertrude told the nurse that Sylvia had run away after she'd become out of control. When questioned about the sores, Gertrude told her that Sylvia refused to maintain her personal hygiene, which had resulted in the sores, and she'd become a bad influence on her sister and the Baniszewski girls. Satisfied, the nurse returned to the school and they never followed up on Sylvia's welfare again. Now, neighbours had noticed the violence Gertrude had been dealing to Sylvia and would later comment that she walked around in a bruised and zombified state. However, they never reported what they saw to anyone until it was too late. Around October, Diana discovered where the girls were staying and went to visit them, but when Gertrude answered the door, she refused to let Diana see her sisters, as she had permission from their parents to not let her see them. Diana would see Jenny a few weeks later by chance, and when asked about Sylvia, Jenny replied, "I can't tell you or I'll get into trouble." Due to the frequency and the brutality of the abuse, Sylvia's body was starting to shut down, and this led to her becoming incontinent. As a punishment for this, she was denied access to the bathroom and would be thrown into the basement on October the 6th and tied up naked. She was deprived of food and water. Gertrude would continually beat and torture Sylvia physically and mentally, inviting neighbourhood children into the house and charging them 5 cents to look at Sylvia and take turns in beating and torturing her. Gertrude would join in and, with the help of her children and their friends, restrain Sylvia before placing her in a bathtub filled with scalding water before proceeding to rub salt into her wounds. In order to muffle her screams and pleas for mercy, they would regularly place a gag in her mouth as they tortured her. The depravity increased with Gertrude force-feeding Sylvia feces and giving her half a cup of water, telling her this was all she would get to drink that day, and offering her food, and when she would eat it, she would take it away, laughing in her face. On one occasion, Gertrude allowed Sylvia to sleep upstairs on the condition that she did not wet herself during the night. When Gertrude came to check the next morning, she discovered that Sylvia, who was unable to control her bladder at this point, had urinated during the night. She took Sylvia down to the kitchen and ordered her to strip naked. She then shouted, "You have branded my daughters, now I am going to brand you." With a heated needle, she began to carve the words, "I am a prostitute and proud of it," into Sylvia's stomach. When she was unable to finish the job, Gertrude ordered a 14-year-old neighbourhood boy named Richard Hobbs to finish the carvings while she took Jenny to the grocery store. Both Hobbs and 10-year-old Shirley Baniszewski took Sylvia into the basement, where they attempted to burn the letter S beneath her left breast using an anchor bolt. However, they incorrectly positioned part of the loop, resulting in a deep burn scar that resembled the number 3. Gertrude later mocked Sylvia, asking, "What are you going to do now? You can't get married." Tearfully, Sylvia responded, "I guess there's nothing I can do." Coy Hubbard then carried her back to the basement. Later that day, Sylvia was made to show the carving to the neighbourhood children, while Gertrude falsely claimed that she had received the inscription at a sex party. That night, Sylvia confided to her sister Jenny, "I know you don't want me to die, but I am going to die. I can tell." The following day, Gertrude forced Sylvia to write a letter. It was intended to mislead her parents into believing their daughter had run away from the Baniszewski residence. The content of this letter was intended to frame a group of anonymous local boys for extensively abusing and mutilating her after she initially agreed to engage in sexual relations with them before they inflicted the extreme abuse and torture upon her body. Gertrude's plan was to have John Jr. and Jenny blindfold Sylvia, then take her to a nearby wooded area known as Jimmy's Forest and simply leave her there to die. Sylvia overheard Gertrude discussing her plan and attempted to escape through the front door, but in her weakened state, Gertrude easily caught up with her and brought her back to the kitchen. Sylvia was then given toast to eat, but due to her extreme dehydration, she was unable to consume it. Gertrude, however, forced the toast into her mouth, then struck her repeatedly with a curtain rod until parts of it bent into right angles. Coy Hubbard then took the curtain rod from Gertrude and delivered an additional blow, which rendered Sylvia completely unconscious. Gertrude subsequently dragged Sylvia into the basement. By the morning, Sylvia could no longer speak coherently or coordinate her limb movements. Gertrude moved her into the kitchen, propped her up against the wall, and attempted to feed her a donut and a glass of milk. When Sylvia struggled to lift the glass to her lips, Gertrude threw it to the floor in frustration before returning her to the basement. In an attempt to wash Sylvia after she had soiled herself, a laughing John Baniszewski Jr. sprayed her with a garden hose brought to the house that afternoon at Gertrude's request by Randy Lepper. Sylvia made a desperate attempt to escape the basement, but collapsed before reaching the stairs. In response, Gertrude stomped on her head, then stood over her, staring silently for several moments. Stephanie then decided to give Sylvia a warm, soapy bath. However, she had stopped breathing before she could be carried out of the basement. When Stephanie realized that Sylvia was not breathing, she attempted to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Meanwhile, Gertrude repeatedly told the children and teenagers in the house that Sylvia was pretending to be dead. When Gertrude Baniszewski finally accepted the attempts to revive Sylvia by bathing her and slapping her face twice with a book were unsuccessful, she instructed Richard Hobbs to call the police from a nearby payphone. When the police officers arrived at approximately 6:30 p.m., Gertrude led them to Sylvia's emaciated, severely bludgeoned and mutilated body, which lay on a soiled mattress in one of the bedrooms. She was just 16 years old. She handed the officers the letter she had previously forced Likens to write under her dictation, claiming she had been doctoring the girl for over an hour before her death, including applying rubbing alcohol to her wounds in a failed attempt at first aid. Gertrude also alleged that Likens had run away with several teenage boys before returning earlier that afternoon, bare-chested and clutching the note. Clutching a Bible, Paul Baniszewski announced to everyone in the household that Likens' death was meant to happen, then looked at Jenny and calmly said, "If you want to live with us, Jenny, we'll treat you like our own sister." Following Gertrude's instructions, Jenny Likens initially recited the rehearsed version of events leading up to her sister's death to the police. Then she quietly whispered to the officers, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." Jenny Likens' formal statement prompted officers to arrest Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie and John Baniszewski Jr. on suspicion of Likens' murder within hours of discovering her body. That same day, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs were also arrested and charged with the same offences. The three oldest Baniszewski children, along with Coy Hubbard, were placed in a nearby juvenile detention centre. The younger Baniszewski children and Richard Hobbs were held at the Indianapolis Children's Guardians Home, and all were held without bail pending trial. By October 29th, 5 other neighbourhood children who had participated in the abuse, Michael Monroe, Randy Lepper, Darlene McGuire, Judy Duke and Anna Sisko, were also arrested. They were charged with causing injury to a person and subsequently released into the custody of their parents under subpoena to appear as witnesses in the upcoming trial. Now, the autopsy of Sylvia's body revealed that she had suffered over 150 separate wounds across her entire body and was extremely emaciated at the time of her death. She had suffered extensive muscle and nerve damage. Her vaginal cavity was almost swollen shut, but an examination determined that her hymen was still intact, indicating that Sylvia was a virgin and discrediting Gertrude's claims that she'd been 3 months pregnant, a prostitute, and promiscuous. Additionally, all of her fingernails were broken backwards, and much of the skin on her face, breast, neck, and right knee had peeled or receded. In her final moments, Likens had bitten through her lips, partially severing sections from her face. The official cause of Sylvia's death was determined by coroner Dr. Arthur Keble to be subdural hematoma resulting from a severe blow to her right temple. Contributory factors listed included the shock she experienced from the severe and prolonged damage inflicted to her skin, as well as severe malnutrition. On December 30th, 1965, the Marion County Grand Jury returned first-degree murder indictments against Gertrude Baniszewski and two of her three oldest children, Paula and John. Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard were also indicted. All were charged with having repeatedly struck, beaten, kicked, and otherwise inflicted a combination of fatal injuries on Sylvia Likens with premeditated malice. The trial of Gertrude Baniszewski and her children, Paula and John, Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard, began on April 18th, 1966. On May 2nd and 3rd, Jenny Likens testified against all five defendants, stating that each had repeatedly and extensively abused her sister, both physically and emotionally. She emphasized that Sylvia had done nothing to provoke the assault, and there was no truth to the rumors she'd been falsely accused of spreading. Jenny stated that the abuse endured by her sister, and much to a lesser degree herself, began approximately 2 weeks after they moved into the Baniszewski household, and as the abuse intensified, Sylvia occasionally became unable to produce tears due to the acute state of her dehydration. This was later corroborated by Randy Lepper, who stated he had once witnessed Likens crying, but she had shed no actual tears. Lepper then visibly smirked as he confessed to having beaten Likens on anywhere between 10 and 40 separate instances. The trial of the five defendants lasted 17 days before the jury retired to consider its verdict. On May 19, 1966, after deliberating for 8 hours, the panel of 8 men and 4 women found Gertrude Baniszewski guilty of first-degree murder, recommending a sentence of life imprisonment. Paul Baniszewski was found guilty of second-degree murder, while Hobbs, Hubbard and John Baniszewski Jr. were found guilty of manslaughter. Gertrude and his children burst into tears when they heard the verdict, while Hobbs and Hubbard remained silent. On May 25th, Gertrude was formally sentenced to life imprisonment, while Paula pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and received a sentence of 2 to 20 years. On the same day, Richard Hobbs, Coy Hubbard and John Baniszewski Jr. each received sentences of 2 to 21 years to be served in the Indiana Reformatory. Over the course of the following 14 years, Gertrude Baniszewski became known as a model prisoner in the Indiana Women's Prison. By the time of Gertrude's ultimate parole in 1985, she had changed her name to Nadine Van Fossen and described herself as a devout Christian. News of her parole was not received well by the citizens of Indiana. Headed by Jenny Likens, a petition demanding Gertrude spend the rest of her life in prison quickly garnered 40,000 signatures. Gertrude told the parole board she could not remember what role she had in Sylvia's death because she was on drugs prescribed to treat her asthma, but she took full responsibility for the girl's death. Taking Gertrude's good conduct in prison into account, the parole board marginally voted in favour of granting her parole. She was released from prison on December 4th, 1985. She lived in relatively obscurity in Laurel, Indiana until she died, hopefully slow and painfully, of lung cancer in 1990, aged 61. Now, following her parole in 1972, Paula Baniszewski assumed a new identity of Paula Pace and worked as an aide to a school counsellor for 14 years before her real identity became known in 2012 and she was fired for failing to disclose her past when applying. Stephanie Baniszewski assumed a new name and became a school teacher. She later married and had several children. Marie, Shirley and James Baniszewski were placed in separate foster homes after the arrest of their mother. Marie Shelton died of natural causes on June 8, 2017 at the age of 62. Dennis Lee Wright Jr. was later adopted. His adopted mother named him Denny Lee White. He died on February 5, 2012 at the age of 47. Now, Richard Hobbs died of lung cancer on January 2, 1972 at the age of 21, 4 years after his release from the Indiana Reformatory. In the years between his release in Indiana Reformatory and his death, he is known to have suffered at least one nervous breakdown. Coy Hubbard remained in Indiana after his release and never attempted to change his name. Throughout his adult life, he was repeatedly imprisoned for various criminal offences. John Baniszewski Jr. lived in relative obscurity under the alias John Blake. He became a lay minister, frequently hosting counselling sessions to the children of divorced parents. He said he enjoyed the attention that the Sylvia Likens case brought him. Happily, he died of diabetes in 2005, age 52. Randy Lepper died in 2010 at the age of 56. All four boys served only 2 years in the Indiana Reformatory before they were released. Now, Elizabeth and Lester Likens died in 1998 and 2013 respectively, while Jenny would go on to marry and have 2 children before dying of a heart attack in 2004, age 54. Throughout her life, she always absolved her parents of any blame for placing Sylvia and herself, stating all they had done was trust Gertrude to look after their daughters like she had promised. And that ends the horrible case of Sylvia Likens. As you can probably tell, there was no back and forth there. There was no jokes or nothing, because there's literally nothing you can say about that case that is funny or we could make any joke out of. And we can make a joke out of many things, but as I said, this is possibly the worst case we've ever covered. There's literally no rhyme or reason behind it all.
No, it's just like here. Here's look after my kids. And then it's like, oh, right. You know what it reminds me of? There was a case like in the late 1700s in London, where essentially, you know, you had like foundling, like sort of hospitals. Now what would happen is like, you'd have like foundlings because they get an education in these foundling hospitals. I'll have to try and find the case. I can't quite remember the names. But anyway, what essentially happened in these foundling hospitals is they decided, oh, we're giving them too much of a good education, so maybe we should just train them up in apprentices. So, like, there were these girls who ended up getting trained up just as maids for, like, bigger households. Now, there was this bunch of maids who were sent to this household in London. I'll send you the thing and you can put it in the fucking doobly-doo at the bottom. No, I will. But, like, anyway, they got sent to this, like, place. And all at first, like, because they had this period of time which was essentially like probation. Yeah. But back then they called it something ridiculous, like building liking or something like that. So for a 6-month period, like, these girls were treated pretty fucking well. And then after that 6-month probation was over and they were taken on as household staff, they got the shit kicked out of them. Like, one of them died. Like, that's how bad it was. I'll find you the case. Yeah, it's one for us. But, like, it's kind of similar in a weird way to this. Like, oh, here are my kids. Like, can you just look after them? Yeah. And then fucking boom. Because
it was like, the money would arrive. It's not like he was not paying it. It would arrive a couple of days late because it's coming through the post.
Yeah.
But it just seems to have, like, towards the, like...
I mean, late payment is no excuse for just like abusing
like she just
your wards, essentially.
Just went mental. Got everyone involved. And then, like, right at the end, she's like, oh, no, have milk. Have this donut and shit like that. Because she's realising that this girl's going to die. And she's gone too far. And then she's, like, stamping on her fucking head. And
it's grotesque.
Yeah.
This is one of our more grotesque cases. Still think the toy box killer, like, thing takes it. That's the worst for me.
But yeah, please let us know what you think. Yeah, but as I said, I wanted to redo this one because I don't think we did it justice with crap audio.
It was the Japanese one that was particular. Yonko Furuto. Yeah, that was horrible.
If you guys, like what we do, the best way you can do that is support us is hitting subscribe and like and doing all that stuff. If you do want to just, support us, if you've got spare money, I know it's hard at the moment for everyone, but if you do want to, you don't have to. You can go to patreon.com/enter the dark. You can join for free and you just get access to my updates and everything like that and the Discord. But if you do want to chuck anything from $1, it goes all the way up to $50. You get free stickers on $1, you'll get free stickers every now and again. You get mugs, t-shirts, stuff like that. I will be bringing probably early video access to it on higher ones, but I don't know yet. But yeah.
That's a good idea, I think.
It is, but it's more work for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And we both got full-time jobs. I mean, give us more money and we'll be able to quit our jobs and do this.
But yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, X, as it's called now. We're also on Blue Sky.
Oh, we're on Blue Sky now?
Yeah, because I'm sick of X. The best way to get hold of us, though, is to email us at enterthedarkpodcast@gmail.com. No www needed. Just email us, even if it's just like, hey guys, I think you suck. That's great. Or, oh, have you heard of this case? I think you should do this. I think you should do that. Great. Wonderful. Just let us know. It'll be brilliant. We've also got merch and stuff that'll be coming up. The names of the Patreons are going up the screen soon. But yeah, not much we can say after that. But I've been Jan. He's been Les. Take care. Bye bye.